It's working.
You are, Nick.
Good afternoon. I apologize. I lost track of time, which is not ideal. Welcome to our meeting today. I guess the first order of business is we have a couple of members of the public here. Hello. Is there any public comment today?
All right, we currently have 2 members of the public on Zoom, and we have 2 members of the public in the room. If you would like to make a comment, please indicate by raising your hand virtually or physically. I see no one raising their hand at this time, so no public comment.
Okay, great. Let us move on to the Brooklands Mothers Out Front presentation and discussion regarding a neighborhood electrification campaign.
I think let's just acknowledge that I'm a member of ZIAB, Patty Correa, and I'm remote. I think that just has to be put in the minutes.
Great, Patty. Who is presenting from Mothers Out Front?
I'm Laura Knott. I am the coordinator of Brookline Mothers Out Front, and I'm here with Karen Kraut. Karen and I are also members of the Fossil Fuel Free team of Mothers Out Front, and we're here to talk about a new campaign called Neighborhood Electrification. We also have a second agenda item regarding priority legislation, which we'll bring up a little bit later. I want to begin by just giving you a little bit of background about Mothers Out Front. We're a national organization of grassroots climate activists founded about 12 years ago in Massachusetts. Mothers Out Front is most active in Massachusetts, and the Brookline chapter is among the most active chapters in Massachusetts, making us one of the most active chapters nationally. So as I said, we're here for 2 purposes tonight. One, to let you know about the new campaign called Neighborhood Electrification, and the second, to ask for your support in requesting that the Select Board notify our legislative delegation that they are in favor of our priority bills, which Karen will discuss at the next agenda item. Mothers Out Front has been engaged with ZIAB, thank you, with Climate Action Brookline and with town staff in writing and now updating resource guides for Brookline residents to help them electrify their homes and vehicles. Most of this effort has been focused on individual homeowners and renters, though a condo guide is in the works, and this work continues. As we try to meet our climate goals locally and statewide, the need for a more organized, less random, and individualized approach has become clear, and neighborhood electrification takes steps in that direction. I'll talk in a minute about how neighborhood electrification can work. There are a couple of options, but first, Karen is going to explain a little bit about the statewide policy framework that has gotten us here to this point.
Hello, everybody. This is not going to be comprehensive, but just some of the highlights are that in 2014, a very different time than today in terms of how we were thinking, the state passed a law, created a new program called the Gas System Enhancement Program. And it was created to facilitate the replacement of aging and leak-prone pipes, gas pipes, which made sense at the time. Especially when the collective assumptions were that we would be on gas indefinitely, and that gas was better than coal and oil and other fossil fuels. However, because of climate change, there has been a big shift in the Commonwealth's priorities over the last decade, and Massachusetts is now very actively moving off gas to meet our 2050 net zero emissions mandates. Last year, and continuing into this spring, lawmakers and regulators enacted new policies to reform the Gas System Enhancement Program so that it is better aligned with the Commonwealth's clean energy plans. Until this realignment, which is still ongoing, we have been on track to spend $42 billion of ratepayer funds investing in replacing aging gas pipes. That is the estimated expected total cost from 2014 until approximately 2030.
That is just Massachusetts.
That is just Massachusetts. That is the cost of 2 big digs and something like $35,000 per gas ratepayer. So without any reforms, we would be massively investing in our gas system, which we all hope to be obsolete within the next 25 years. Fortunately, our lawmakers and regulators are working to reform GSEP. That's its acronym, so that it's better aligned with our goals, our clean energy plans and our emission goals. And some of these changes include prioritizing just the highest risk pipes for safety reasons to be replaced. Replacement is upwards of 200 times more expensive than repairing a pipe. So as you can imagine, gas companies, because of their major financial incentive that was created through GSEP to replace pipes, they've been replacing pipes that don't really need to be replaced, not urgently for any stretch. So there's a new working group to figure out what are the highest risk pipes, prioritize those. They also are very much enforcing sort of repair over replacement, and you have to demonstrate that you couldn't do an alternative before you get your reimbursement for pipe replacement. And they're now newly financially incentivizing alternatives to pipe replacement, such as what Laura is going to talk about, neighborhood electrification and thermal energy networks, also called network geothermal systems. So that's the direction we're all moving in.
We should say that the GSEP program developed in 2014 financially incentivized the gas companies to replace pipes by accelerating their cost recovery and guaranteeing a rate of return of something like 9%.
Yeah, it's a huge boondoggle.
So I have another acronym for you. It's NPA. What is an NPA? It is a non-pipeline alternative. The Massachusetts Department of Public Utilities has required that the gas companies identify segments of the gas system called NPAs that can safely be pruned back or decommissioned without impacting safety or service in other areas. In NPA areas, then, it's possible that residents would transition to all electric appliances, getting heating and cooling from air or ground source heat pumps, and then the gas main would be decommissioned. We've seen a neighborhood take this possibility to heart and really try to investigate how it might work. That neighborhood happens to be in Newton, not in Brookline, and Karen's going to tell you about the Garland Road project in Newton.
So I don't know if anyone read it, but we provided the article from Heat Map about Newton's efforts to electrify their neighborhoods, and Newton is really at the forefront in Massachusetts of this effort. I'm just going to give you a series of highlights. It's called the Garland Road project. And in late 2024, National Grid proposed a GSEP replacement pipe of 600 feet of existing aging pipe on Garland Road. And there were no known leaks on this pipe. The street had 9 single-family homes and 1 3-unit multifamily home. Many residents spoke out against the replacement at a public hearing, saying it was a poor use of ratepayers and limited resources. All affected neighbors were surveyed, and they indicated anywhere from a neutral to enthusiastic support for electrifying their neighborhood instead of replacing the pipe. Then a detailed assessment was done on every house to determine the present level of the electrification, who already had heat pumps, who already had, different stoves or whatever. They just did that for every single house. There weren't that many. And then they estimated the comprehensive building electrification costs, getting that information from local sources, Eversource, National Grid, and other sources like Heat Smart Alliance. The study showed that electrifying every house and building on the street is less expensive than installing the new gas pipe. No surprise. The costs were 41% less than that is going to cost, below that pipe replacement cost. And the long-term carbon savings were over $600,000 just on that 600-foot pipe. In the end, very disappointingly, National Grid decided that the pipe was unsuitable for replacement, unsuitable for retirement, because it provided pressure to support other homes in the area. However, Newton really remains a model for all cities and towns in terms of their efforts to engage residents and push back on gas companies' sort of automatic pipe replacement plans where it's appropriate. And I just want to bring your attention, you may not know this, but I can send this to you, but in 2023, Brookline was also recipients, did a number of pipe replacements throughout Brookline. In fact, we did 2.2 miles total of pipe replacement under the GSEP program in 2023. And does anyone want to take a guess on how much that costs us, not us personally, but ratepayers? 2.2 miles. Anyone want to take a guess?
$3 million.
How much?
3 million.
Close. $15.25 million for 2.2 miles of pipe replacement.
That was supposed to be $1 million.
It's the average now is $3 to $4 million, and this was almost $7 million of pipe. And one particular section that I looked at was $9 million for half a mile. I mean, a mile, so $4.5 million for half a mile. This was in 2023.
We did a calculation on the Stedman Street replacement, which just happened this summer, and it was 10 million.
Was it?
Yeah, 10 million per mile, for a mile.
Right.
If it had been a mile, it would have been 10.
So
Ratepayer money.
right. So this is to say that I think we can all agree that electrifying the buildings that would have been attached to that pipe instead of keeping them in the gas system would be a heck of a lot less than $15 million for two and a tiny bit of miles of street segments. So that brings us to why we would like the town of Brookline to be more active in finding ways to analyze communities for potential neighborhood electrification.
The National Grid has to report to the DPW the possibilities for NPAs, non-pipeline alternatives in cities and towns. And they had to report them recently for 2026 to 2029. Should I pass this around? This is in your packet, and so this is it's a map showing the 4 NPA zones that National Grid has identified as safe and feasible in Brookline. And then the second sheet of paper I'm passing around is not comprehensive, but the information that is available about the streets and house numbers on those streets. So as you'll see, there are 4 NPAs identified in Brookline.
Sorry, Laura, to interrupt you. Just for folks online, Rebecca, she's doing it now, pulling up what folks in the room are seeing so that you can see it on the screen.
Thank you.
Sorry, didn't want to cut you off.
So as you can see, there are 4, the 4 arrows are showing the 4 potential NPAs in Brookline. And they are in 4 different precincts. So here's the work that Mothers Out Front is doing in the last few days, really. Tonight, we'll start meetings with town meeting members in precinct 6 and 8. In order to
So excited about this, he wants to hear it twice.
The technologist can't get phone to work.
So our meetings will start tonight with town meeting members, and we're really focusing on the 2 smaller of the 4 NPA sites, really for the sake of our resources. And those are, one of them is on Wilton Road, which is a very Winslow Road, sorry, I always say that wrong. Winslow Road, which is a very small street in precinct 8. And the other one is on Hurd Road and Linden Place, which is in precinct 6. So Mothers Out Front is meeting with, or has asked to meet with, and will be meeting with some meeting members from those 2 precincts, just to ask them, how do we communicate with your constituents? How can we get this information to people? We have heard from the Department of Public Utilities at the state level that they are interested in hearing from residents who support this non-pipeline alternative. We also last week, and thank you, Alexander, for attending as well. We met with Dan Murphy, the head of transportation, and with his staff about their interactions with National Grid, about the kinds of information that they receive and when they receive it, and so on. Around gas pipe replacement, yes, and when they receive it and so on. And we provided them with the same documents that we're providing you tonight, with the report from National Grid saying these are possible zones. That's what we have about this item on the agenda, and we'd love to open it to questions and discussions if we have a little more time on the agenda, I think.
Bill, go ahead.
So I'm curious, you have the lineage, the linear footage for the pipeline itself, I guess, on this chart. But do you have a count of the number of households or buildings or properties or anything like that? It seems like another.
One thing I should also say is that the gentleman who from Newton, who's the expert in producing these, who gave this to us, he said that these are very imprecise until they actually file a very specific public work order or something like that. And then you really get like the actual addresses. So this is a little unreliable, gives you the general sense, but fairly unreliable. So we don't, even if we estimated that, it might change.
There is a range of addresses, and part of what we'll be doing is walking these streets and counting the houses. So we don't have it yet. And this is the information that was required to be provided by National Grid to the DPU.
So it sounds like there are two calls to action here, one of which is support Newtown Select Board.
That we haven't discussed that yet.
Okay.
Just
This is just
kind of
two.
educating about this and getting people's thoughts. There are a few other people that have some questions.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
What was happening with the pilot projects?
So the Framingham pilot of network geothermal they're about to release their data report. It's been very successful. Just to be clear, they did not decommission the gas pipe. There's still a gas pipe backup. But every house was decarbonized and had an ability to get off the gas pipe. They haven't officially done that yet, partly just because out of all caution, The other thing is that the costs on any first installation are relatively high, but they already were approved to have a second loop, which will already have significantly lower costs. And a lot of the lessons learned will allow for the pilot is intended to learn these things and then move forward at lower cost. This was the first ever utility installed network geothermal system in the world. Actually, there are network geothermals in many places, but this is the first utility installed one anywhere.
And National Grid backed out of theirs was cost.
So now
Cited code cost overrun.
there are a lot of people who question their assumptions in their costs for there was a Lowell project that they just decided not to go forward with. There were a lot of kind of ridiculous costs in there that were assumed. However, National Grid is going forward, as far as we can tell, with a site in Boston, in the housing authority in Boston, in Franklin Park, I think, or near Franklin Park. And then separately, in another regulatory order, the different utilities have to put forth also a neighborhood electrification pilot, which is different from a network geothermal pilot. Network geothermal is one type of system where it's kind of complex. You install pipes and it has to be the right mix of buildings. A neighborhood electrification is just air source heat pumps, getting people, being able to transition off gas, but not related to digging up the streets or anything. And they're required to have a demonstration project for neighborhood electrification as well. And right now, only National Grid has filed where they're going to do those, and those are Leominster and Winthrop. And then Eversource very soon is going to announce where they're planning to do theirs. So those are going on and soon. Those get started.
Yeah, I don't know if you've seen it. There was a webinar from, I think it's Stanford University. It's a series of webinars on various decarbonization topics. And it was on a few months ago on a project in, I believe it's in California, either California or Washington State, what they call block electrification. And they talk a lot about it. The idea there, it had nothing to do with I guess you could decommission the gas lines, but the fact that it cost less because you could get better pricing on equipment, the mobilization costs were lower and stuff like that. I don't know if you guys have seen that.
I haven't seen that specific one, but
Yeah, I can, with somebody's email address or something, I can send you.
love to see that.
There are some pretty significant social issues as well in the idea of neighborhood electrification, because as we've seen in Brookline, that if we're dealing with individual homes and asking individual owners to decarbonize their homes, we're really talking about people of means. So the cost effectiveness of neighborhood electrification holds the promise that people of more moderate means would also be able to get off the gas system, which, we have learned is in a downward spiral and an upward spiral in terms of cost.
Also, it's an equity issue, people, if you can't afford to get off gas, you're gonna be stuck in the utility death spiral where your gas rates are gonna go way up and your health is compromised. And it's just not fair to do it so randomly, and just those who can afford it can do it. So, and then also you all probably know that there's now a new heat pump customer electricity rate. So there's a big discount that you're gonna get if you're a heat pump customer. And who are the heat pump customers? The people who can afford it. So there are a lot of benefits if you have the means to do this, and we need to be looking for ways that make it more equitable. We think neighborhood electrification is one of those.
Alexa, did you have a question?
Can I get in line? I mean, I've had my hand up. I just want to make sure I'm in line.
Sure, Patty, definitely. I did not see that. Thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Okay, thank you. I have a couple of questions, and I'm just trying to understand kind of the ask here. And so I'm sorry, I'm remote tonight, and I couldn't hear what the town transportation department angle is in this. And then my other question, I'm sorry to have you repeat, but my other question is about cost sharing between homeowners and the utility in the Framingham pilot, and what's contemplated in any other pilots, such as the Boston Housing Authority project going forward. And then my third question is, I understand that geothermal is the most efficient way to do heat pump powering. And I'm just wondering if there's any data you know of that came out of Framingham to date about cost savings that homeowners may have enjoyed. Thank you. And then I'm just kind of curious kind of what the ask is if you haven't gotten to that yet. Thank you.
Well, we should say, first of all, that the ask tonight is for us to be able to come here and explain to you this new the new program and the new possibilities that are emerging for our town. The ask in our next agenda item is to help us get some legislation endorsed. But at this point, we're very early in this campaign. As you can see, the information that we're getting, even from National Grid, is pretty sketchy. So our meeting incomplete. So our goal right now is to inform our elected and appointed officials, and also to take questions to try to clarify what the program is and how electrification might work.
I would just add to the ask that, you folks are looking very comprehensively at Brookline and reducing our emissions, and we'd like this to be part of what you consider neighborhood electrification in some form. And to that point, this organization called HEAT, H-E-E-T, issued about a year ago a number of Kickstarter grants to help communities explore the feasibility of network geothermal. We weren't ready to go. We didn't have Alexandra, our wonderful sustainability director, on board at that time. It was a missed opportunity. But I think it'd be great if we could find funding to do a feasibility study and see where might the right place for network geothermal be for places in our town. So that isn't like an actual ask, like do that, but that's just another way that the ZIAB could kind of be investigating this as an idea and seeing if there's ways to further evaluate.
And that really points to kind of the resources that Mothers Out Front has. We're an all-volunteer organization. We're gonna target these two spots, but there are two others that are significantly larger.
So I think, Patty, did you get your question?
Let me quickly answer your other
Some of
question.
them, not all of them.
The Department of Transportation was just a meeting that we had with Dan, and we basically informed him, like we're informing the ZIAB, about NPAs, and asked him a lot of questions about how they interact with National Grid, and learned a lot about how permits are provided, and to the extent there are grants of location, how they're provided. That was the purpose of that meeting. Your second question about costs, let me just be very clear that we do not know who would pay for the decarbonization of homes in an NPA. That has not been determined. That is a big factor that the state is dealing with a lot of experts on how do we finance this transition. GSEP is not like a pot of money that you just grab from to do different things. It is forward looking. It is like, we will do this thing and we are authorized to get reimbursed for it. So it's not, it's the only thing that has just recently been carved out is they now can have a small percentage of that GSEP path within GSEP to be to do NPAs. So Patty, the answer is we don't know. And just so you know, as we are talking to neighbors about this issue, we're going to say, if this were affordable to you, that's all we're going to say. We don't know if it will be, but if it were affordable to you, would you be open to this idea? Because we just don't know the answer on cost right now, unfortunately.
Mike, you got a question?
Two questions. Number one, and I'm assuming, as you said, this data is sketchy at this point. I would be curious to know the BTU impact that's carried along these pipes so that, you know, we know which pipes are sort of more impactful to get out of the system. And I'm curious, as you start to decommission pipes, what impact to system integration actually means, because that sounds like sort of hocus pocus words to say no, and I would be curious to sort of get more clarity.
I think that some of the first question about BTUs, we don't have an answer to that.
Right.
But I think that for your second question, some of that is going to be addressed in our next agenda item because it has to do with state legislation that requires, first of all, more information, but also requires the electric companies and the gas companies to work together. So I would say that in general, the goal of the state legislation is to reduce the hocus pocus factor.
I think Vikram had a question.
Actually, yeah,
Not
sorry.
Okay, Bill?
Two quick, I guess, further questions.
We're running out, we're already 6 minutes over.
We don't need as much time for the next
Yes.
section that we were allocated, so.
Go ahead. I will talk even faster. So the impact on the CARP, we are in the midst of our comprehensive, update to the climate action plan. And I think neighborhood electrification was at least alluded to, if not explicitly in it. But the connection here, particularly around network geothermal, seems like a good touch point for us to make sure gets reflected in the CARP. So that's something we have to track. Second item is something Patty alluded to, which is Brookline Housing Authority projects and how this whole idea fits into new or major renovation construction. I gather new construction is required to be all electric. But in Brookline, but not required to be geothermal based or any other tie-in to network. And major renovation, I don't know where that stands in terms of
Anything over 50% is required to be.
electric, okay, but still lacking any kind of broader community-based plan. So is that part of your thinking? Does that maybe something we should also kind of slip into the CARP as a town-based strategy? Because the equity piece of this relative to the housing authority, I think is a really
Absolutely. And one of the first things we did when we started working on this project together was to kind of look at all of the BHA properties and see if they showed up on any of the NPA designations. Of course, they don't. So, yes, the influence of the town could be very, very helpful, but I can tell you that the staff, like anyone who deals with gas, is very cautious about taking their guidance from National Grid. They are going to ask National Grid what is safe to do. No one wants to blow anyone up, including all of the activists. So we need to recognize that the language of safety is always going to be a propellant in this issue.
Mm-hmm.
So if we can make this a more visible issue in the town with the staff, with the elected officials and so on, it's possible that in the 2027 to 2030 plan from National Grid, that more would be added, and we certainly hope so.
A structure without gas is safer than a structure with gas.
Well said.
So
True.
safety is a driving factor.
That is certainly true, but if you talk to anybody from a gas company, they're gonna tell you they're worried about the mains. So, and I respect and understand that, but that language is also, I think, sometimes used as to obscure other issues as well.
Okay, so I've got two comments. Well, I guess one is a suggestion. The first comment is if National Grid or other utilities are resistant to doing this, which you suggested they might be, why is this? And this is a rhetorical question, really. Like, why is this limited to working with utilities to do this effort? Because you could do some level of community-based, effort independent. So if there is an effort, I guess the question I'd have is, why aren't you looking at that?
What's it, why would you say?
Why wouldn't you just say, regardless of whether it's an NPA, because particularly because we don't have the financing for NPAs works out.
Right.
So if it turns out that there's no money here,
It's no different than not.
then it's no
Right,
different than
yeah.
just asking people to go do this by themselves.
Right.
Right? So until that question's asked. So that's just an observation, I guess. And the second thing is, do you have a timeline or a plan for, you're gonna do this outreach and you're gonna, because that would fit into how we would work with you, because maybe the right next step for us is that you go out and do some outreach and then you come back and present the findings of that and then we determine how we move forward. That might be a good option. Is that what you're looking for?
We have tentatively scheduled a public meeting on September 29th to talk to people in those districts. We don't know if it's gonna attract people yet. It seems early to me. But we are accelerating this effort in large, well, not in large part, but in part because of its tandem legislative effort, which we'll talk about, next. The hope, I guess, and the plan is that at least one of these areas between the period of 2026 to 2029 will become an actual MPA. Ideally it would be all of them and that would be expanded, but we will need the support of ZIAG, we will need the support of staff. It will have to be a broad effort for that to happen.
Okay, I assume you've been talking to our meeting members around it.
Yeah, we're starting tonight, we have 4 town meeting members sign up for Zoom at 7, so we actually have to leave early to go meet with them. To give them really the same kind of information, but that's specific to their precinct.
Okay, in the interest of time, perhaps you could reach out to Alexander and myself, come up with a suggestion for how you want support for your 29th September meeting.
Okay, great.
And any other support. I anticipate we're going to come back to this at some point. I don't think we have time to discuss and it's like I need to come up with a solution about how that's going to work right now. So unless anyone else objects, I don't think there's any other to-dos coming out of this. Am I wrong?
I think that's right.
Okay, I think we should move on to the next agenda.
Thank you. Okay, we're gonna talk fast.
You don't need to talk fast. It's okay.
So we're now gonna move to the request for you to support letters coming from the select board about statewide legislation. Just a moment to say that Mothers Out Front works frequently at the state level. We do actions that we call Shirt Up and Show Up, where we go to hearing, we wear our blue t-shirts, we go to hearings, we're visible in the galleries in the House and the Senate on Beacon Hill. We are also in regular contact with the Brookline delegation, and that's, mostly by email, but we do have one-on-one meetings with our legislators as well. Both of the bills that we're asking you to ask the select board to support will come before the Joint Committee on Telecommunications, Utilities, and Energy this fall. The state legislature has revamped its rules so that any bill that does not come out of committee by the first week of December of the first year of the legislative session is unlikely to reach the floor. So there's quite a bit of momentum, which is great. You may recall last year, the 2024 climate bill languished, was not passed in regular session, although there was an overnight session to try to get it done. It wasn't the only one that wasn't passed. The legislature came back into session in November and ultimately it was passed. So the rules have changed now to accelerate the process of review, and the process of review is now taking place in the fall of the first year of the legislative session, which is this fall. So we are at DAB to recommend that the select board send letters which we've drafted and provided to you, to our legislative delegation, and to the co-chairs of the Joint Committee on Telecommunications, Utilities, and Energy. The reason we're asking for the letters to come from the select board is that the timing is terrible for us to go to town meeting. It's too late. The November town meeting is too late in the legislative session for us to do that. And the voice of elected officials to the legislators is quite strong and vivid and often heard, I think. I'll also say that 3 out of 4 of Brookline's representatives in the House have already either co-sponsored or presented one of the bills. The 4th of our representatives, Bill McGregor, who represents a slice of South Brookline, was recently appointed to the Joint Committee on Telecommunications, Utilities, and Energy. Now I'm going to call it TUE. And Senator Cream, our senator, is the sponsor of the 2 state bills. One more note about why we're taking this route. Recent changes have happened at the level of the DPU commission. 2 commissions have been replaced, and the DPU, the Department of Public Utilities, is on the executive side. The DPU has been very friendly to decarbonization in the last couple of years, has taken a number of regulatory measures to propel decarbonization and to get us off the gas system. But the need for legislative action is amplified by the fact that the governor has just replaced 2 of the DPU commissioners. We expect to still receive their support, but regulations can be rescinded quite a lot more easily than legislation can. So Karen is going to summarize the priority legislation. All of this is all in your packets as well.
Yeah, I'll just give you the highlights and feel free to ask questions. One thing just to frame this quickly is that it's very rare for a bill in its entirety to go through the legislature and be signed into law as the bill. Usually provisions from the bill get incorporated into an omnibus bill on the topic like energy or climate or education or whatever. And so even though we're asking them to support these bills, ultimately we are expecting that some of the provisions will make it into some final legislation that's moving through the legislature. So with that, I wanted to start with the municipal empowerment bills, we call them. These are provisions that would directly help Brookline as a municipality. And just in a quick summary, I would say that this legislation basically requires gas companies to provide more detailed information about the purpose, scope, location, and timing of planned pipe replacements and repair work, as well as general information about the condition of the gas infrastructure within our town. Pipe replacement plans for the 4 years forward. So instead of just getting them maybe a year in advance, it would be required that we would get 4 years in advance which would allow us to be much more proactive in identifying maybe pipes we don't want to replace. Maybe we want to repair them or decommission them and find an NPA. And work that was not submitted to a municipality for review in the 2 years prior to installation would not be approved for GSEP reimbursement. So that's a big stick. And it gives Brookline and any town 90-ish days to review and comment on the plans. Towns can propose repair or non-pipeline alternatives. And if there is a disagreement between the town and the gas company, the DPU would decide before installation whether the work that the gas company is proposing would be eligible for GSEP reimbursement. So it provides a lot more information to towns. A lot of towns don't get a lot of information from their gas utilities, just to be clear, which was what prompted this legislation. It sounds from our town that they have a pretty decent regular communication with National Grid, but this is really a tremendous help to municipalities that need more information to do better planning for their own utility work, gas sewers and whatnot, and also those that are forward looking and want to get off gas.
Also,
Yes.
just to say, we're receiving some of this information now from National Grid, like this information that we passed out tonight. But the reason we're receiving it is because the DPU has regulated that we be given it. It doesn't exist in state law yet. So that's what this does.
Thank you. And then, do you want me to say the summary of the other bill before I take questions? Okay. So the other bill is actually, let me call it the tactical transition bill, but there is some fuller name to, what is it? Do we have the full name? An tactical transition to clean energy or something like that. I'll just say what the three broad objectives are. It would first and foremost require gas and electric companies to proactively and jointly plan a coordinated strategic transition to clean energy. That addresses your comment, Michael, to some extent. A managed transition is going to be more efficient and cost effective than an unmanaged one. So this would require that planning. The DPU did require gas companies to do integrated planning going forward 5 years, which is called climate compliance plans. But again, it's a regulation, it's not in law, and it's not as extensive as this requirement. The second thing that the tactical transition bill would do is it would shift resources away from replacing gas pipes with new pipes and towards investments in clean energy alternatives, all while ensuring safety and reliability. And that has to do with the fact that they would ramp down the massive financial incentive of DSEP for pipe replacement while they're ramping it up for clean energy alternatives. That makes sense. It's kind of an inverse disincentive of pipe while incentivizing alternatives. And third, it would provide an equitable transition for gas workers by allowing them to transition with their same benefits and wages to clean energy projects like energy. I'm not going to go through and list. I have a big list of other specific things it would do. Those were the broad objectives, but I don't know how much time you want me to get into the nitty-gritty. You all have a fact sheet on this. I'm happy to answer any questions that I can about the bills.
Before we get to that, I just want to give you the overview of where our representatives stand. Can I do that first, and then we'll.
Yes, and then we'll take the question. Patty's waiting, so just,
Yeah.
I'll just.
Okay.
You guys in order.
So you have in your packet draft letters to our representatives, and here's where they stand. Representative Kevin Honan has signed on to the tactical transition bill, and we are asking him to also support municipal voices. Representative Tommy Vitolo was an early supporter of tactical transition. He is also supporting municipal voices. We are asking him in our draft letter to take an active role in their passage. Representative Greg Schwartz is the presenter of one of the two municipal voices bill in the House, and he also is supporting the alternative bill in the House. And he has signed on as a supporter of tactical transition. We are, again, like with Representative Vitolo, asking him to take an active role in their passage. Representative Bill McGregor, as I said, is on the TUE. He has not taken a public stance on either of the priority bills. We are asking him to help to shepherd them through the TUE process. Senator Cynthia Crean has petitioned the Senate version on both of our priority bills. The letter to her is essentially a thank you. She is a climate champion, and we'd like to thank her. Senator Michael Barrett is the Senate chair of the TUE. The letter to Senator Barrett simply expresses Brookline's support for these bills, and the same thing for Representative Mark J. Cusack, who is the House chair of the TUE, to express the support of our team. So, must.
Great. So we're going to start with Vikram because it hasn't really said anything today. Did you have?
No, Patty has had a,
Oh, I know, but did you have a question?
no, I have a comment actually.
You have a comment. Why don't you give your comment and then we'll go to Patty.
Okay. So again, this is great. And the one comment, and I realize you're not drafting the bills, but one idea to consider might be, again, utilities want to make money. Sure. Is there an opportunity, which I hate to even suggest this, but maybe in the interest of climate, we let the utilities make money by either financing the electrification and getting guaranteed returns. So instead of spending $12 million a mile, I bet you there were X number of homes and 100% electrification of those homes cost 10 million, let's say. Let us have you make money on those 10 million.
That is exactly what the legislation allows for. the finance mechanism of GSEP, which is accelerated cost recovery with a nice fat profit, that would be ramped up for NPAs and ramped down for pipe replacement. So it's exactly right.
What is it? Okay, so you've got, great, I think it's Patty, go ahead.
Thank you. So I second the kudos to Senator Cream. She's been such a champion and mover and shaker on major climate legislation in the last few years. And so because of that, I have two questions. Where is she also sponsoring other climate legislation, and is there any sense of where these bills lie in that universe? And my understanding is that these two bills were voted by the statewide Mothers Up Front as priority bills. And given the universe of climate bills this session, why is that? Thank you.
I can't answer all that right now, partly because I don't know what else Senator Cream has put forth. I know in the past she's been very interested in carbon sequestering, carbon mechanisms to take carbon out of the atmosphere. So I don't know if that's going anywhere last session or this session. And I wasn't part of all the discussions about what climate bills were evaluated and then selected. So I know that our priority is basically trying to facilitate the transition off fossil fuels generally. So I can't really answer that question about why this was chosen over other things. I do know that the people that worked to develop this legislation are very active members of our coalition. So we're more aware of this and had input into this as opposed to other bills that were drafted with other sponsors or sources.
I would add as well too, that these are kind of the logical next steps for the work that Mothers Out Front has been doing for the last 10 or 12 years on trying to facilitate the transition. The state team at Mothers Out Front, the legislative team is very astute at analyzing what is possible to accomplish and what the next steps might be. So I think these are kind of a logical outgrowth of what we got into the climate bill in 2024 and how the DPU has reacted to the requirements of the climate bill.
The only other thing I would say, I know, Patty, you know a lot about the electrification side. Just historically, Mothers Out Front had started as a group trying to address gas leaks. So gas has always been our main focus. And so we're mostly about transitioning off gas, and we're not as knowledgeable on like distributed energy resources and things that are more about electrification. Not that those aren't critically important, but it's just not our kind of basket historically.
Thank you. Alan, you have a question?
Actually, Vikram, articulated it for me.
Okay, I have a question. These are more statement. These are form letters that various towns are being asked to send out. Is that correct? They're written by like a centralized Mothers Out Front?
No.
Written by this group?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Go ahead.
The reason that we wrote them ourselves is that
Oh, I love that.
we know the legislators.
Yeah, that's great.
I mean, these are just samples. You can do whatever you want in terms of changing it. It's just trying to make it easier for you rather than starting at a blank page.
Well, I really appreciated in those letters the way in which it reflected their actual position and stances they've taken already. So it was somebody put some work into that. I'm curious, where will the opposition be coming from and who will that be?
So this is what we expect to happen, as I kind of alluded to. The governor filed a major bill at the beginning of this session about energy affordability and a few other things. It's a 118-page bill. Both houses they're sort of using that as a starting point, but then they're going to craft their own bills with maybe some of that, a lot of it, very little of it. They'll do what they want, but that is sort of the starting point. It looks like there's going to be two tracks, somewhat rooted in the governor's bill, and some of our stuff, which is about affordability, we are asking them to include, and some other things that are more about longer term transitions that aren't immediately about lowering customers' bills, we'd like them to consider as well. So we collectively, Mothers Out Front and the coalitions that we're part of are assuming that, I'm sure I don't even remember your question anymore, but we're basically trying to get our provisions from these bills into the vehicle that's moving, which is related to the governor's bill. And how that happens, we'll have to see.
It's also a little bit different than usual because the process is accelerated. So I'm not gonna promise this, but I would not be surprised if Mothers Out Front sponsors a resolution for the Springtown meeting to express the sentiment of town meeting in favor of, we'll know more about exactly what gets by then.
Or do you have a question? So I certainly appreciate all the work that has gone into this. My only question, I guess, is sort of around the priorities. I'm very much inclined to trust you all. I mean, that obviously, Mothers Out Front is a great track record that's been doing a lot of things like this, but for me to, I have no idea. You know, there are a gazillion climate related bills out there. I don't myself know which ones are the priorities. So what I'm kind of curious about is, I can understand from statewide Mothers Out Front wanting to write to these people about this. It's fine. It's good that you've done this, but you actually, Cindy Freeman, Tommy Tola don't really need a letter from Brookline to encourage you to do this. I can see that maybe some of the other reps might, but then that raises the question of you're asking those people to consider this a priority, and you talk with Tommy and Cindy about their priorities, because it would be kind of awkward if Tommy said, well, you know, there are 10 climate bills, and I really don't like this one, but my town is writing a letter to another rep in my district saying, give this a priority, and I don't think it's a priority.
We have talked to Tommy specifically about the technical transition bill. He signed onto it very early, and you know, I've had one brief conversation with him about it where he said, seems obvious to me. So I can't answer that about the municipal voices bill, but for the technical transitions bill, he was one of the first. They don't call them co-sponsors anymore. They changed the name, but he was among the first to sign on to it.
I certainly think you have the moral authority on the municipal empowerment bill, because you're basically saying we want by law National Grid to share information with us in advance so that we can do some better planning. So I don't think that's a climate bill in the sense of the way that, you know, we're incentivizing one thing or another thing. It's really just saying we need more information to do better planning from National Grid.
So just some,
Oh, I was just gonna give a quick example to show how this is so needed. So years ago, we had a transportation director, Peter Ditto, and he would explain to me that they would basically pave all these new streets, and then 2 months later, National Grid just comes and rips it all up. And then they patch it as needed. It looks terrible. So from a municipal planning standpoint, they can't plan the order of their own work because, you know, if they have a street that's in bad repair, it could be in bad repair in less than a year, depending on whatever the video of National Grid is back.
I have a question for Alexandra. So there's a requirement that town would have to be involved in the approval, more involved in the approval of gas work. That's what it sounds like as part of these bills. Is that correct?
It's not a requirement. It gives the town
Gives the town the
authority to, yeah.
Does it have the option to do what?
To contest a pipe up replacement.
Okay. Do we have someone in place in the town who would be interested in doing that, willing to do that? Is this something that we could actually support in Brookline?
Yes.
Great. I'd love a short answer. Short answers are excellent. Oh,
There could be more, but yes.
no, yes is awesome. Okay.
I'm sort of curious, is this process that also comes through the licensing board? Is there an expense that's all?
Yeah, so that's a little bit of the meeting that the Mothers Out Front team was referencing with Dan Murphy, who's our director of engineering and transportation. Was part of that was helping understand what is the grant of locations process. And so for any grant of locations is only needed primarily, in the sense when we're doing a full pipe replacement. So, but repairs to the pipes, those don't go through the same grant applications process. However, those do come to DPW staff, and they're trying to do a better job of coordinating and knowing about those ahead of time, so that we DPW can say, hold on, we're about to do a whole repaving project on that road. Don't do that one now, push that to next year. Can it wait? And have that conversation. So they still have to go through a review process with DPW, but it doesn't go through the grant applications.
Only, I think it's 6 grants of locations have been required in the last 5 years. And the grants of location are really only required when a new pipe is being laid.
No, it's not correct. It's when a pipe is relocated or expanded. If you are putting a new pipe where there was an old pipe, they do not need a grant of location, they just need a permit. That's what Mark said.
Yeah.
So the overwhelming majority of pipe replacements that happen need no grant of location. If it's just where it was in the same area, it just goes through with a permit.
But
So you never get notified as
They need a permit.
They need a permit that goes through, it's called a licensing panel.
Yes,
Yes.
that's,
So you're,
Sorry, so the licensing panel, I was
I
I was
believe-
conflating that with the grant of locations approval.
Right.
So sorry, yes, 2 separate things, but they do still get a permit through for any of their work.
Yeah.
That goes to DPW and it goes to the licensing panel. Different than the grant of locations.
Right.
Can
Understood.
can I jump in? Pat, this is Patty. Can I jump in?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Question or comment, which is other players on the municipal empowerment bill could be Mass Municipal Association and Metropolitan Area Planning Council, who have lobbyists and some, degree of being known and having some credibility on Beacon Hill. Have they taken has either taken a position? Do you plan to reach out to them? That kind of thing.
that's a great question. I don't know the answer to that, but I will say that we provided Alexandra with the MPAC, the MAPC, the Metropolitan Area Planning Council. They had submitted formal comments related to the gas company's climate compliance plans, where they talked all about how important NPAs are and how it was so essential that there was coordination and information sharing by the gas companies with the municipalities. So it wasn't specifically within addressing the legislation, which we should reach out and make sure we talk to them. But I think that would be very informative. Maybe Alexandra, we didn't want to overwhelm you. We already were sending you a lot of things. But if you'd like to share the MAPC's comments with them, I think that you guys would find that really interesting.
I think we should stay focused on the ask here, which is to go to the select board. So does anyone have any objections or concerns about recommending that the select board?
Well, yeah, I guess what we're asking is to ask the select board chairman to write a letter to, for example, Tommy and Cynthia Crean and so on. I would assume he's in communication with them all the time. And I just wondered, is this the best way to do it? Or is it, should we just, maybe I'm wrong in that assumption, but should we just, in a conversation with them, say, please do this and get feedback from them?
Do you want to answer that or do you want me to?
I think the select board taking up a formal recommendation for the CF is a more compelling process to get this through than something more sort of casual. More casual. I mean, what I assume you're talking about is a vote to recommend.
Yes.
That would be the process.
Yeah. So, and just to answer your question, as just a little bit of research, there's 24 climate related bills apparently currently in front of the House and Senate. There may be more, but roughly 24. I think if we don't know enough about those as a group to kind of assess the relative value of these bills versus those bills, that's on us. And I think that we can't make that an impediment to supporting this ask. Is the position I would take. Now, maybe we'll go do some research and be like, oh gosh, we shouldn't have done that. But since we haven't done the research, and since it's timely, I would like to propose a motion that we ask the select board to send out these letters substantively as they are, with allowing for Alexandra to make any changes which she feels are necessary.
I'll second.
Second. Beautifully drafted motion, Nick.
Oh, well, I've been thinking about it for ages. So there's a lot of time. So I'm going to ask people to vote in order. Patty, I'm going to start with
Just confirm who seconded it.
who seconded.
Aye.
Patty seconded it.
Yeah,
All in favor. Patty, start with you.
aye.
Vikram. Aye. Bill.
Aye.
Kathleen.
Aye.
Alan.
I,
Werner. Nick. Aye. All in favor. Great. Next, thank you very much. for your
Thank you.
presentation.
Thank you.
Feel free to get in touch if you have any follow-up questions that you didn't think of.
We're around and now we have to go meet the TNS.
I will send out a spreadsheet after this.
We're still on
A
the.
quick research of all the bills and costs.
So
I'll be in touch, yeah.
we can get more.
Feel free to add additional bills that look great. If we're, you know, these are the ones we're, I'm sure there are many excellent bills.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, so next up, we have the, I think, right, on next. Yes, Climate Leader Communities Program overviews. Okay, so you've heard me talk about this, numerous times. So this mostly is, kind of a repeat of information, but just to let you know that we're actually underway with this process and that some of this will be coming to ZIAB, for us to actually move forward with this. I apologize, Michael, you've already heard this, because of the change in ZIAB schedule. You heard it before they did, but, so you can zone out for a bit. So this is the Climate Leader Communities Program. This is a state Mass DOER certification program just launched this year, and it builds upon the Green Communities Designation Program, which Brookline is a part of. And so basically it provides a framework for meeting goals that are outlined in the Massachusetts Clean Energy and Climate Plan. So right now in the state, there are 19 certified climate leader communities. They'll have another round of those that'll be designated likely this fall. And so, as you'll see shortly, I'm proposing that Brookline meet the requirements and apply to be one of these certified communities, with the next application being due in December of this year. So why do we care about being part of this program? Certainly bragging rights, but also the Climate Leader Communities Program provides money. It provides grants for support of projects that we want to do, projects that are being included in our Climate Action Resiliency Plan right now. So energy efficiency measures, heating and cooling projects, energy management services, energy generation on municipal property. So those are directly things that align with projects that we want to do and have identified as priorities. So they have those grants are divided into two different. One is a technical support grant. So that's up to $150,000 to hire vendors to produce recommendations and engineering design documents for clean energy projects at different municipal facilities. This is particularly helpful because we don't have those technical resources in-house to do that sort of design and assessment. So it essentially allows you to do the prep work for you then to apply for one of the next grants, what they call the accelerator grants, which is up to $1 million for projects that reduce greenhouse gas emissions from our municipal operations.
can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Are there examples of projects where this would be useful in the last year or two?
Driscoll Solar.
Yes.
Is the most obvious one that comes to mind. Yeah.
Great.
So what are the requirements to be a climate leader community? You have to be a green community in good standing, which basically means that you have to complete the annual report and not have, any outstanding grant reports that are due. So we are in compliance there. We have to have a local committee that advises, coordinates, and leads clean energy and climate activities. That's all of you. So we have that. We have to demonstrate a municipal decarbonization commitment. We have that in a few different iterations through town meeting, but also obviously through our climate action plan. as well. And then I'm going to skip to number 6, which is we have to adopt the specialized stretch energy code, which Brookline has also already done. So the 2 that are still needed is develop a municipal decarbonization roadmap and adopt a zero emission vehicle first policy. And both of those are in process. So the municipal decarbonization roadmap is a project that you've heard me talk about a few times now. This is a grant that we applied for several months ago and received to have a vendor conduct a technical assessment of all of our municipal buildings and associated emissions and look at building out a plan for essentially how do we decarbonize those, how do we prioritize those, particularly looking at our top emitters. The zero emission vehicle first policy, we have a vehicle procurement policy in Brookline, and that does give prioritization to zero emission vehicles. And quite honestly, we're doing this in practice, which is anytime we go to replace a vehicle, we say, is this vehicle one that would be eligible to become replaced by a zero emission vehicle? But that's just not explicitly stated in our vehicle procurement policy. So there are just some tweaks that need to happen for that to be in compliance. So as I said, the decarbonization roadmap that's underway, and we anticipate having a draft of that roadmap in the next in fall, so in the next couple of months here. And our plan is that we would be returning to ZIAB looking for a vote of support for that plan, and then we would follow up and do the same thing with the select board. And then for the EV policy, we will also return to ZIAB with a draft policy for you all to review, provide any feedback on, and then again be asking for a vote of approval from ZIAB. And then both of those pieces would go before the select board for final approval. So our timeline is to return to the select board with the remaining requirements this fall, and then submit the Climate Leader Communities certification application in December. And then come spring 2026 is when hopefully we would be accepted in the program and then be eligible for those grants that I identified, which would actually work out well, because that will be about the time that we have a fresh climate plan finalized and ready to help guide some of the procurement of those grants. So I will stop there and happy to answer any questions.
Is there anything you need from us right now, or is this just information?
This is informational at this point.
Have to move on to the next item, but unless other people have any questions, comments, concerns? No,
Great.
we can't hear you, Patty.
Huzzah.
Will a copy of what you just presented be available? I don't think it's on the.
Yeah, both of these will be posted with all the other meeting materials tomorrow morning.
Let's move on.
Great, and that's.
Oh, actually, I do have a question. Do you need help from us in any way, shape, or form with any of that work?
Not at this point. I will ask for ZIAB to provide a review of the zero emission vehicle first policy, and certainly to provide a review of the draft decarbonization roadmap. I mean, the decarbonization roadmap, it's a little bit prescribed what that includes and what we can get out of it. So, you know, if there are tweaks, clarifications, questions that ZIAB has, we can, you know, take those back and work with the vendor who's working with us on that. Whereas the policy is literally something that, you know, we write and are working on. So that has a little bit more room for modifications from ZIAB.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Just so everybody is clear in terms of the process for those policies, are you planning on bringing those policies to the select board between now and December?
Yes, so I bring them to ZIAB first, and then once ZIAB gave approval, I would bring them to the select board.
And it sounds like before you bring them to ZIAB, you might want some review from someone from ZIAB just to kind of go over it.
Yeah, probably for the zero emission vehicle first policy.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Great.
Sorry.
Committee.
Oh yeah, for the municipal for the vehicle policy as well, since it affects the school budget. Shelley's just reminding me that also needs to go before the school committee, so. Lots of approvals, which is why December doesn't actually seem that far away. Okay, next up, hold on.
Sustainability and natural visions. Vision.
Okay, so this is our usual, this is just our usual division update. Just some updates on our capital projects and reporting requirements that we have. For Driscoll Rooftop Solar, I'm pleased to share that contract approval went through by Building Commission, School Committee, and Select Board. So we are currently working on getting the final connection costs from Eversource for that project and have that contract locked in at this point. And then we are looking for hopefully starting the installation of that late fall of this year. So I will keep you all updated. The goal is that the project would be live and operational in spring of 2026. Municipal rooftop solar assessment. So one of the things that our team is working on, and this obviously ties in as well to the climate action plan, is that we are looking at all of the municipal buildings in much more detail than what we were able to do when we originally were talking about the climate action plan and initiatives, and particularly looking for where we have the capacity for rooftop solar and where what the prioritization of that would look like when we consider the roof size, the roof age, et cetera, and any associated assessments that have been done. Then that'll expand also to not just rooftops, but looking at solar canopies as well. So we're starting on that process in earnest right now, and looking at kind of historical information that has been collected, that I know some of you have been participatory in the past, as well as doing some assessments with the building department as well. Did you have a hand on that, Bill?
It's on its way up.
Okay. All right, and then we have two different reporting requirements that we've completed over the summer, and these are relatively new. LBER, large building energy reporting, is new. This is the first time we've had to do that for the state, and so I'm going to ask Shelley to talk about that one, a little bit of overview of the process and lessons learned, and then this is technically the second time we're reporting on fossil fuel free, and the demonstration project that we are a part of in Brookline. But the first one was not quite as organized or clear on what the reporting process looked like. So DER has done some more work to develop the information that they're looking for. So for most purposes, I would say this was the first real report that we've done in terms of fossil fuel free. So I will hand it over to Shelley to talk about those two.
I'll start with LBER, the large building energy reporting. So DOER, as folks probably know, identified buildings that they thought they knew the owners of, and that they thought that those owners needed to report those buildings, the energy use for those buildings. They had originally identified 26 buildings as town owned that met their requirements to participate in LBER. We ultimately claimed 20 of those buildings. 6 of those buildings we got exempted. Some of them were the Pierce School, which is either demolished or under substantial renovation. They had 2 different Driscoll schools, identified. And there were some other miscellaneous things, including, for example, the town owns the land that the Marriott Hotel is on, but we don't actually own the hotel. And also the Lars Anderson Auto Museum, where the town actually owns the building and owns the land, but we lease it out. And what we did is for the purposes of this sort of transferred the responsibility of reporting to the Autumn Museum, with their cooperation, since we don't have any access to any of their energy reports. So it was sort of my first few days here, and I was learning a lot about the buildings. And we ultimately also gave the DOER access to our energy reports for those buildings, so that they'll be able to figure out the energy use for those buildings. We have some complicated buildings. We have some buildings that share energy energy accounts. So we needed to identify campuses. So for example, Town Hall, the main library, and Pierce all share a gas account. Brookline High School, the UAB, the swimming pool, the gym, they also all share, or they have a single gas plant, heating plant that serves all of those buildings. So so somewhat complicated, and certainly for somebody brand new on the job who was trying to figure out where these buildings are, was complicated to sort of understand those relationships. But we now have it in place, and hopefully reporting will be relatively easy in the future. As new buildings come online, like the Pierce School will obviously have to update the list each year again. So unless anyone has any questions about.
I do have one, has the public LBER list, the one that the state puts out, is it showing corrections to things you submitted?
For the ones that I submit, for all of the exemptions, I got something back from them saying that
Right.
I didn't actually go back to the list.
Yeah, my personal experience is that you've got letters acknowledging the exemptions, but the list hasn't changed on that.
Okay,
I think they have a lot of exemptions they're
I
going
think
through,
they have
so
a
I
real
don't think
lot.
that list is gonna change
I'm
anytime
just curious
immediately.
what-
If I had to guess, I think they're
yeah,
a lot.
I honestly didn't think to look.
That's fine, thank you.
So, so now fossil fuel free. So we needed to report for, I guess, 10 of the 12 months of 2024, during which, since Brookline's adoption was effective as of February of 2024. During that time, there were more than 1,600 building permits pulled. And of that, there were 193 certificates of occupancy issued in that period of time as well. We narrowed it down to look at the certificates of occupancy, and ultimately reported on just 6 instances, primarily because of the time lag of you pull a building permit. The certificates of occupancy that were issued in 2024 were largely for projects that started in 2023 or possibly 2022. So we didn't have to report on a whole lot, but it took a decent amount of effort to figure that out. We've subsequently had meetings with many of the other communities that have also participated, because Brookline is one of 10 communities that's participated. And many of us had similar situations. Some are very small communities, some are very large communities, some have very active participant. The building department is very active in this, some of them not as much. So there was some range, but basically many of the issues that got raised were the complexity of and uncertainty in some cases about whether to determine. It was always easier with new construction, right? Building it is eligible, but for fossil fuel free, it also is in place for buildings where more than 50% of existing conditioned floor area is being addressed. And that's a much more complicated issue to determine. And that was largely universal. Some communities chose to say, okay, if you're touching anything, you're fossil fuel free, proof to me that you're not. And others had a different approach. Another issue that we ran into was, we're all largely using whether there's a HERS report as a proxy for whether a project that is in fact an alteration is eligible under the fossil fuel free program. But in fact, there can be instances where somebody, for example, decides to follow Passive House, a different building standard, and we haven't quite figured out how to capture that yet. And the various communities also just generally talked about their differences in determining gross floor area. Some use it within the wall, some use it out, outside the, from the exterior envelope. Some add condition space, some don't add condition space. So those are all issues that I think the communities that are part of this pilot are all trying to sort through, and with the participation of DOER to try to, I think we're all committed to making it work and making the reporting easier and more uniform, but we're working at the kinks.
2 questions.
Sure.
First is, so I've done 2 rehabs passes. The second one I did, we started this big and we ended up this big.
Mhm.
So the original permit would not be 50%. The final work would have been 50%. Is that something you've seen in any of this? That there's a changing set of conditions around this?
Right. I personally haven't, but other communities have expressed that.
And then if there could be people who are trying to avoid
Mhm.
this, so they could say, well, I'll renovate a third of my house now, and then next year I'll renovate. Do we have any approach to that kind of gaming of the system?
No.
Okay.
And there are some communities that spoke about hearing that there were some applicants who chose to renovate 49% of their space. But we didn't, anecdotally, we didn't have that. We didn't have a lot of we're not close enough to the process to the applicant pulling a permit to infer that story. And we didn't hear it from our building department.
And it's, I guess the third question is, after the fact, sometimes you get your value, your house gets reassessed. Who comes out and does that?
Yeah.
The assessors did this, the assessor. Are the assessors involved in any kind of post facto kind of way to say this is what actually changed, or that's not part of the process?
No.
Okay.
It is an interesting thing to take up because there are columns in the assessor's database. Many, including things like, what. I think there's actually one for like what type of heating you have,
Yeah.
fuel types and all those things. And any effort to keep those up to date.
So it might be interesting also, because if you've done, someone had seen my original permit, it would be 25%. And then if the assessors came out, they'd have been like, this is a very clearly more than 25% of the house has been renovated. So there is I don't know.
Yeah, so I'm not sure what the remedy would be at that point. Are you gonna force them to
Well, then,
do another
I have
project?
no idea what the teeth are to this, so.
Yeah,
Well, I guess it would be captured in the inspections,
yeah.
I wouldn't
the
bet.
final.
I mean, renovation goes over 2 years, you change building inspector, you see someone else, I wouldn't count on any of that.
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line here is, did you see any compliance problems? I mean, or in this reporting, I'm a little curious as to sort of exactly what the state is getting out of this reporting.
We are too. Yeah, we don't know yet. I don't know yet.
And is there anything in the reporting that would tell you if there's a problem in Brookline with compliance?
I think renovations are really hard for us to see, assuming no one is trying to gamify the system. So assuming no one's trying to modify anything to make sure that they can slide in under the radar. I think the major renovations are really hard to capture. And I think That is an ongoing question if all the information is there. And then I think there is the human component of these are with different building inspectors and, you know, what level of knowledge and abilities are there for seeing someone who is trying to gamify and do a workaround.
Yeah, it also seems to be one of the kind of big questions here is, I think maybe those of us that were involved in doing this originally, you know, we're pretty frustrated with the fact that the state decided, for, I guess, political reasons, to have to set up this 10-town thing. And because in fact, you know, you all, I'm not sure we're getting a lot of benefit from having a report from the state. Then what you have is, you know, surely in the beginning, there are going to be some problems. But we know that the building department isn't perfect, but we know that in general, the building department, they try to enforce the zoning bylaw, they try to enforce the building code, they're trying to enforce this. In the beginning, it may not be perfect, there may be people that cheat here and there, but you know, over time, they'll get better at it, they'll work its way out, and it's something that they're good at. And to be asking you to spend a lot of time doing this is kind of frustrating.
I mean, I respectfully want to say that, you know, I think that we're very committed to the idea of fossil fuel free, right?
The whole
So
town, or the building department, or you, or
what?
the whole town, or the building department, or
Well, I say our department for
Yeah.
sure, you know, in the town in general, right?
Yeah.
You know, there are kinks, like you know, it didn't occur to me that we calculate gross floor area differently than a different town. You know, so if a regulation says 50%, we have to work that out, and maybe a smaller group is willing to work that out, and then we can open it up.
yeah. I mean, I guess what I just say is that runs all through New England government, 354 communities. You know, it's fine to work it out, but you know, by and large, if some town would calculate it, 53%, another 47. It's fine. It's just,
Yeah.
it's just a lot. It's bureaucracy.
I think Patty's had her hand up for a while. Patty,
Patty?
you're
I'm
muted.
sorry, I'm sorry. Yeah, okay. I didn't see the report on the sustainability website, at least on my phone. Maybe I missed it, but can that be posted with the materials and on this, maybe, I don't know if it's worth, at least with the materials, because we're talking about the report, and maybe on the sustainability website, if that seems appropriate.
When you say the report, you mean the fossil fuel free
Yes.
report? Yeah, so that will be posted as the state is the one that is developing the platform for reporting that. And so this is their first time of getting the information to from all the different communities in the same format. And so they haven't shared that information yet. So we submitted it all to them in their platform. Their platform is not publicly live yet, but happy to let you know once it is.
Thank you.
Kathleen,
I just
oh,
have
sorry,
one-
Bill's had his hand up. Laura. Can we see the slide that we were working from? Is that easy?
Yep, sorry, I just took it down because I wanted to note Patty's hand.
Trying to work from memory a little bit. The first item was about the approvals for this one. And good to know the three bodies approved it, but were there any themes to concerns or opposition, or was it pretty smooth sailing? This is our first time out with a new approach, right?
Yep. Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, so it was challenging in that because of how this project was funded in the vote for those funds with town meeting, that it had to go to building commission, school committee, and select board. So it had to get 3 different approvals, which is just long and requires some coordination in itself. I would say the first, and then also making it further complicated is I went twice to everybody because we originally thought that it was going to be a smaller project than what it ended up being at Driscoll, because the plans that Select was working off of that were provided by the building department, showed that there was gonna be rooftop equipment on Driscoll that once they came out and actually did the site inspection, was not there, and so they could add significantly more panels to the system, which was good news. And we had the budget in the Driscoll project to support that purchase. So all it led to a more higher performing system, more energy. It was all good, but it did require more money. So I would say that you know, the second time I went around, easy breezy. The first time was, you know, a little bit more trying to understand, is this the right approach, and is this the best use of funds from the project budget?
That's good because it sets the stage because you're going to be going back for more approvals for more rooftop systems going forward.
I would love not to go to all three, but yes, I will to go back.
Right, but just in terms of learning about how to make that process. So,
Yeah.
And then on to the second item, you said that you plan to expand rooftop to include canopy, but is ground-based also still on the list?
Yes, yes, sorry. So when I said canopy, all of the above, yeah. So we're starting with rooftop because that's where we have the most information and the most potential, but it's expanding to all potential solar options.
Kathleen,
Oh, quick question for Shelley. When you said that there were 1,600 permits pulled for that 10-month period in 2024, how many fossil fuel free projects did we end up with? Did you say?
6.
6, that's what I thought.
6. So I only report if somebody has been issued a certificate of
Right.
occupancy.
Yeah.
So in the 1,600, there's probably a large group that next year or the year
Right.
after
Yeah.
I'll report on, but I don't report on them
Okay.
preliminarily.
Okay, thank you.
so I have one comment and then I would like to move on. But on the rooftop solar and on the solar assessment, would it be interesting or would it be useful for us to have either a policy position from ZIA about like how we hope to move forward with rooftop solar? So for example, purchase versus lease kind of thing. That's kind of on the as a in response to Driscoll, because we had that to and fro. That's the first question. So do we need a policy position? I think we probably do. It'd probably be helpful. And the second question is, do you need help from ZIA on municipal rooftop solar assessment effort? So, because that's quite a broad reaching effort. We do have some expertise in the room. So
Can we add a third? Sure. I think right this time, because of time constraints, we ended up going with Power Options selected vendor.
yeah,
And the pricing, I think there was some potential to have better pricing, better O&M contract.
so there might be a policy position, there might be a vendor position or a vendor approach. So is that stuff that you need help with at all, or do you feel like you're able with that?
I think I would say I would interested in Michael's feedback on this. I think we could certainly have a general policy position on it. I think it's ultimately going to be variable by project.
Yeah.
It is going to depend on, do we have, if we didn't have $500,000 in the Driscoll project, I think it would have been much harder to get the approvals from all the entities to authorize that purchase. So I think it probably is going to be, at least at first, on a project by project basis, but Michael, I'm curious on your thoughts on that.
My thinking is sort of similar to yours, that certainly the funding mechanism is gonna have a big impact on how this is done. I guess if you had a policy position that said something like, in the budgeting process of this project, if it's a project that is more than just like, we're gonna take an existing thing and put rooftop solar on it, we recommend the inclusion and the consideration of solar panels or other alternative energy or fossil fuel free energy sources, which sort of you have to do anyway. If you're going to do fossil fuel free construction, that be included in the budgeting process, so that it rolls back further and you have more opportunities for the funding. Because if it, for example, becomes part of a bonding process for a larger project, it could get rolled in more soon.
Okay, I think this is a long conversation. I kind of regret bringing it up. Let's have a longer conversation on this at another time. Let's get on with the meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
So just a couple other quick updates. We have some grant funded projects that are also underway. So our MVP 2.0, that's the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Grant. So we've completed our vendor interviews, and we're preparing to award and execute contract is the word missing there. And then we are launching our first meeting with the municipal core team, which is representatives from different departments that will be providing input and guiding the development of the prioritization on these different resiliency priorities. And that core team will also include representatives of the community. Part of the MVP grant requires that those community members be identified and compensated for their time, which is, I think, a very innovative part of this grant on behalf of the state. The Community First Partnership Grant. So this is the grant that funds the part-time energy advocate. That was long time lead up to get us to this point, but here we are. So we have the job posted, which I shared with all of you for the part-time energy advocate, and we have a pool of candidates that we'll be interviewing starting next week for that. We have the Municipal Decarbonization Roadmap Grant, which I mentioned in reference to the Climate Leader Communities Program. And so in large part, thanks to Shelley and the building department, we've been doing a lot of cleanup of, the cleanup of our data for municipal energy data from FY22 has been very much Shelley, which is a intricate web of energy. Your energy, not energy usage, but I guess both are applicable because they want to use FY22 data. And essentially the Green Communities Program requires that you submit our municipal energy data each year, but because sustainability has been a little bit of a, rolling ship that's moved along through a few different departments, some of that more historical data needs some cleanup. So we've been doing that for FY22. And then finally, we have a grant with Mass CEC, Clean Energy Center, for the curbside charging. So we've gotten public input on where EV users would like to see curbside charging. This particularly is to help those who don't have the ability to do charging at their residence. And we're reviewing those potential sites with the Mass CEC team and developing preliminary design. So I will return to Zia with updates on that.
Then the question on the public input for the charging grant or for other things, you use a crowdsourcing thing. Is there anything that prevents one person from voting 100 times?
That's a good question. I believe that that they could do it if they submitted themselves under a different name and associated contact info each time. But this is actually only the second time we've ever used that. So I can double check and see if there's anything more.
And then in addition to that, what other sort of things go into that? Because I can imagine public input is good, but public input could be lack knowledge of conditions or things like that.
Yeah, so public input is one piece, but we also really looked at, we being the staff, looked at where do we have existing public charging? So where is there a public parking lot that we would consider, within a certain radius of these different homes? We looked at the housing stock. Where do we see a lot of multifamily homes where we believe it would be difficult for people to have their own charging. And then we also did actual field site visits. So where is there the capacity for this infrastructure? In this case, for this grant, we are in particular to try to avoid more infrastructure in the sidewalk itself, which ultimately gets hit by a car or a snowplow or something. We are trying to do pole mounted charging stations, which is proving to be a little trickier than I hoped because nobody wants us to use their poles, namely Eversource and Verizon. So we are looking for street lights that we own so that we can't put the infrastructure on there. So there's a lot more than just the public input that goes into that.
I can send you a picture of a London-based
You already did.
station that's in the pavement. You can't run over it. You cannot run over it. It's interesting. I just sent it to you.
Yeah, you did that.
I have a comment. I don't really want to discuss it, but I know that when we talked about EV charging before, we talked about like it'd be good to have the 19.2 chargers. But then I found out that 19.2 only works for a very small subset of cars right now.
Really?
Like, for example, my Rivian doesn't work. It works for like 3 cars right now, as far as I know. So,
Really?
you know, the GMC,
Oh, okay. Oh,
humongous, and the,
Okay.
like, so there's some set of cars that it works for. Anyway,
Okay.
just a comment. I don't know if that affects our future planning. But it's not clear that 19.2 will become a standard across the board for cars because it's AC versus DC and there's a cost to it as well. But anyway, just a note.
I'm curious, I've had some conversations with other staff about, the level of charging that is going into that. Is this specifically focused on DC fast charging or?
No, this
Yeah.
grant does not. So this was, the Mass DEC grant was only for level 2 stations, not for level 3 stations.
And is it, do you know what level of level 2?
It's 19.2.
19.2, yeah. We should, if it's more expensive, we should do a little bit of research to work out whether or not it is an emerging standard. Because it might just be, it's just some small set of cars in my life.
Yeah,
Yeah,
agreed.
that's sort of what my. Is it ultimately what, relative to focusing on the.
Yeah, as if it was like two 11 kilowatts versus 19.2 is the same price, you would go for 211 kilowatts at that one because if there's only a subset of cars that can use anyway, whatever, we should do a little bit of research on that.
Well, I think you were talking about that. You were talking about versus level 3 DC
Yes.
fast charge.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's not eligible under this grant at all. But I will say, just as a side note, that we have very much heard and received the direction that the town really wants DC fast charging stations moving forward and no more level 2s. But
And
this,
I noticed that's what was in the CARB draft.
yes, so that feedback has been heard, but this grant was didn't allow that and was already procured before we had come to that kind of finalization, if you will.
Is this going to end up consuming real estate that would be better served by level 3 projects in the future?
When you say real estate, do you mean, what do you mean? by that?
I mean like space in a parking lot or space.
Well, none of these go in the parking lot. So this grant is specifically for curbside in the public right of way. So it only is going on public sidewalks. And that's again, why we were trying very hard and are trying very hard to prioritize locations that would allow it to go pole mounted as opposed to in the sidewalk itself.
Okay,
How long is the town's commitment for any of the installations?
What do you mean the town?
Contractual agreement with somebody, right? Green Spot or
To,
Charge Point?
are you talking about for this grant or are you talking about in general?
Starting with this grant.
So this grant, there's no contractual agreement other than that they are developing and installing the charging stations for us. And then we will be the owners of those charging
So it'll be
stations.
like Charge, not
So-
Green Spot.
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
So the only charging stations in general that we have that are public infrastructure that we don't own are Green Spot. I'm happy to send it to you what the contractual agreements are for when the years floats up for those.
Cool.
Just one quick last thing that I don't need an answer now. It would be interesting to see how the usage of existing level 2 chargers go. I mean, sometimes I'll come over here and I'm here for an hour and I'll put it on because I'm here and that's it. But if I were going to the store and there's a level 2 charger, let me plug it in, I probably wouldn't bother because I'm not there long enough. And people really use level 2s, or more than casual use.
Well, I don't know if I can speak to.
No, I
more-
don't need an answer now. I'm just, it's like.
Well, I was just gonna say, I don't know if I can speak to more than casual use. They definitely use them and we have usage data across all of our level 2 stations. For sure, our Webster Street level 3 stations are the ones that get the highest usage. But we get usage across pretty much all the level 2 stations that we have. And happy to do a future kind of breakdown on that as well. And then finally, the climate action resiliency plan. So just a little bit of an update on timeline for the project. So we've completed that baseline data and then engagement section. So we're really in the action plan development process. Obviously, last week we had presentation of the preliminary and very draft goals and strategies to ZIAB. And so in October, we'll be going to the select board and giving a really an overview of the project itself and where we're at in the development of the action plan, so that the select board is, you know, not hearing about this for the first time when we come forward again with a final plan. In November, we will use one of our ZIAB meetings for a bit of a working session, if you will, to go a little bit deeper on the action plan. And then we would present that to ZIAB based off of that feedback in January. And the completion of the plan and a vote by ZIAB would take place in March. So I bring this up because this is different than what we've talked about. We're pushing the final plan out into early 2026. And we originally didn't think that we would be able to do that because the plan itself was funded through ARPA dollars, but we are able to do that. So we're giving ourselves a little bit more time.
What, oh, is that just to make it better? Or
Yes.
things get in the way?
Yeah, it was going to be very, very difficult for us to get all of the approvals that we need, especially with the town meeting schedule and the holiday schedule in November and December. So anything that's affecting the work of transportation, the transportation board needs to have the opportunity to weigh in on. The anything that affects solid waste, the solid waste advisory committee needs the opportunity to weigh in on. And so it was just difficult with many of those boards meeting once a month for us to complete the review with ZIAB, the review with all those boards and commissions, and then finally the review with select board, all the while working around town meeting.
Is town meeting, oh, just town meeting scheduling got in the way? It's not
Yes.
the town meeting is playing a role.
No, yeah, town meeting's not playing a role. I just meant in November and December between holidays and the
Yeah.
town meeting dates, it's difficult to squeeze in time.
But the final acceptance is select board, not see it, right?
Yes, so it would come here to ZIAB and then it would go to the select board after.
So I'm seeing March, it's
Yeah.
still just a ZIAB, so there will be another meeting after the March meeting for select board?
For select board, yeah,
So
and that would be, in depending on when it happened in the ZIAB schedule, that would determine if it would go to the select board in March or April.
Your current website still has the original.
We just changed this about 2 days ago, so yeah, we haven't updated the website yet.
The one thing that I would add to that, to the extent that you can in the project overview or discuss this in ZIAB, the select board is currently working on its fiscal year 27 goals.
Mhm.
And one of those goals involves identifying, I don't have the exact language, but it basically is extracting goals from the CART that need select board focus in fiscal year 27 in
Mhm.
order to push them forward.
Okay,
And so to the extent that you can lift those things up earlier, that would be helpful so that they get into the fiscal year 27 select board goals to the extent that the select board needs to take action.
okay, yeah, that's and sorry, Mike, say again, when is select board finalizing their FY 27 goals?
Let's see, we're discussing them on Tuesday. I think we're working on them like through November.
Through November, okay, great, thank you.
Don't hold me on that, ask Chance, she's the one you know.
All right, we have two items more items on the agenda. We should move on. We are running a little late here. I would still like to finish at 7.
Are you sure? She's sure.
So this is just a little presentation. I took the January or February presentation that we talked about, like what we're going to do this year, and I refactored it for just now. So if you can jump to the next slide, H2, Q3, and Q4. So just the agenda, we're just going to look over what the 2025 goals initiatives were in the January vision, talk about where we are, talk about a work plan, which is for discussion, and then some thoughts about initiatives and ZIAB member focus, and then some next steps and some discussions. So you can jump in. So this is what we had in January. This is what we presented. We discussed this in January. This is just here as a recap. it's not really discussion about this. But we basically, our goal was to work on the CARP and to set up some working groups. I think the working group effort has stalled a little bit. The town working group was really, I don't think that's stalled, actually. That's been working ahead very well with Alexandra. Residents working group stalled a little bit. We're waiting on a staff member, and the commercial working group is also stalled. But I don't think any of those things are problems. But let's move on to the next slide. We've completed our initial work on initiatives as in the CARP. Some of us have provided individual input into the CARP. We've transitioned ownership of the prioritization framework to Alexandra, which we discussed last week. That isn't to say that it's not going to change over time, but the purposes of the CARP, it's now in her camp. Since January, we have new guidelines from the select board on how public bodies should operate. I don't know if all of you got those. Should I forward them to everyone, or did everyone get them? Okay. Yeah, great. The working groups have not materialized as anticipated. And it turns out, so the residential working group talked about, but it's also very likely we have more small things to work on than the working group structure allows for. I'll discuss that in a second. We also have a list or a backlog of items that we need to work on. Alexandra has that list, and we have a provisional kind of like Q2, Q3, Q4 schedule, which we will share at some point. There's quite a lot of things on there that we need to get through. Some of those things Alexandra just talked to already. It includes, working on the CARP, reviewing the CARP, but it includes all of the stuff that Alexandra's been talking about over the course of last year. And we also need to make some more time for public comment. Let's move on. So this is the stuff I wanted to talk about. So we'll continue with some working groups. This is a proposal. Residential working group will continue. Hopefully we'll get a hire soon. We just talked about that, I think. And then I have these other sort of proposals about how we move forward. So the idea would we might work on some focused initiatives in a more casual way than necessarily in a working group. And part of the reason for this is that the town guidance on how we should operate says that working groups should be town-led, meaning staff-led. I actually reread that. I'm not 100% sure that's what it says. It may intend to say that, but it's actually a little bit vague. But we'll take that as a given for the time being. We've had a lot of discussion, probably more with the four of us, all the seven of us, about the fact that town resources are limited, although less limited than they used to be. And so we don't necessarily want to pull Alexandra and her team into working groups where it's premature. So there are some things that we can work on independently. Berto would be an example. Werner and Alan worked on the initial version of Berto. Werner and Alan we had a brief discussion about them to continue to develop it. Patty is interested in working on aspects of the Brookline grid. I hope I presented that properly, Patty. I'm not sure if that's exactly right, but and I have etc. because I think other people have other areas of interest. I think Vikram, you're probably interested in municipal solar, as an example. Yeah.
If you say so.
I'm just taking a wild step. So I just kind of the idea here being that we will have working groups when we're ready for them. So the residential working group hopefully will start up in the fall, sometime in the fall. We will have around Berto, I think there's some work for us to do before we formalize anything with the town. There's stuff we have to go off and do. There's more work that we have to do before we can do that. Similarly, working on the Brookline grid, that might be something that Patty has to go off and do some more research on before we bring this to Alexandra and town staff. The idea behind this is that we should, but if we're going to go into this work, we should have objectives that we all agree upon. So if Patty's going to go off and work on electrifying the grid, we should understand what that work looks like. We should have some sense of a timeline, so we know when it's going to come back to us, so that we can fit it into a larger kind of schedule, if you like, or plan. This is basically what I'm going to discuss. Does this sound like a good general approach or a good modification to how we've been working? Procedurally, I think what's important here is it meets the requirements of what the select board has said, how the select board has suggested we work. It meets the requirements of open meeting law, the nature of like how open meetings should work, right? It allows us to, one of the important things for me is, let's say Bill's really excited about EVs and transportation, just for example, just off the top of my head.
Random.
It allows Bill to go up and work on that and do that with a set of objectives that are agreed upon by Zia. And, you know, that's his interest and his passion. You can go do that, right? So that's what's interesting to me. Vikram.
So one thing again, this is just a brainstorming a little bit. I was thinking it may not be a bad idea. Every organization should do a retrospective on how they've been working.
Yeah.
Like we've been now working together quite a while now. And maybe the town folks have feedback for us. How do they see us and our role? How are we working towards supporting the town goals or whatever? Just maybe, I don't know if it makes sense for us.
I think it would be a very interesting thing to take people who've never been through a retro. I think that would be really interesting. Yeah, we could try that at some point. Yeah,
Yeah,
that'd be a good idea.
it could be very casual, like I think, of course, it has to be public, but yeah, just be honest and just have a discussion about what are we doing well, what can we do with this.
I would love to do that. We could do that at a future meeting. That's a great idea. Patty.
Thank you. I have been remiss and I have to read the guidelines and I just put it on my to-do list for this week. However, my question is, Nick, you didn't sound 100% confident of your interpretation, and I wonder if Alexandra can confirm the interpretation that working groups have to be staff-led?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
And we also, Patty, we discussed this, me, Michael, and I think Shelley and Alexandra talked about this already.
Yeah, that's fine. But I didn't know, I don't have any background on that.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to ask for myself. Thank you.
Michael worked on those guidelines, so I don't know if you have anything else you want to add to that.
Yeah, so I guess this is somewhat related to open meeting law. It is somewhat related to ensuring that committee work and staff work is well aligned. And, you know, it certainly does not preclude the kinds of sort of research working, I'm not even sure if working group is the right word.
It can't be the right word.
It can't be the right.
Initiative's a great word.
Yeah. So, I mean, those were the sort of the two primary pieces. There are basically a whole set of public bodies, and the fact that working groups are not specifically, they don't specifically have to be public bodies. Those staff may choose to run them as public bodies with, you know, meeting minutes and posted notices and all of that. But it's not a requirement for the select board. So, and open meeting law carves out a very specific role for working groups that are staff led. So the Brookline Public Bodies Handbook, which includes the description of working groups, really follows the state open meeting law definitions in that regard.
Thank you.
So, I have a comment about Berto. I mean, I think, Alan and I both think, we all think Berto is really important. We want to talk about, we're happy to do that. It is, and also, it more than some of the other things we do, I think ultimately it's something that requires coordination with staff, community, and town meeting, and ultimately someday at some point there's going to be a warrant article to put this in place, and clearly the issues of community outreach involved, and whether yeah, I mean, it has to be, they have to involve something. So I guess what I feel like is, I'm not sure, continue to develop Started Fiber. I mean, I feel like until we can sit down with somebody on the staff, Shelley, or whoever's those about this and wants to work on this, it's basically really doing research.
I think that's sort of right. I think what we can do is we can come up with a plan. So if we can put together a plan for Berto and strategy that says this is how we want to approach this. We can then talk about it as a group. We can get buy-in from Alexandra and hopefully buy-in from us.
I don't feel like so much of the plan is how to work how much other town departments have to involve, how you reach out to the public. Perhaps people sustainability group need to talk to people planning, who with economic development, people, planning department tends to be the people that do most public outreach, know who's out there in terms of real estate people who might be interested in hearing about this and so on. To me, I don't feel like, I've been, I've always spent all the time, I don't feel like I by myself can develop that kind of part of the plan without, or should develop that part of the plan without talking to staff.
Can I jump in at some point? I don't know where I am.
I'm just gonna let Alexandra respond to that,
Yep.
and then you can jump in, Patty.
Yeah, so I think it's probably, I think the next slide that you have states this. If Ziad's ultimate goal with Berto is to bring it forward as a warrant article, I think then there is a lot of work that has to be done to prepare for that warrant article to be dropped. And so I think it's a question of what is in the perfect world of Ziad's version of that warrant article, what does that look like? And then it's eliciting conversations with having those conversations with staff on, hey, this is what Ziad is bringing forward, give feedback on that and doing some of that iterative back and forth. Simultaneously, I think Ziad, who is not an advocacy group, needs to decide who are they engaging with others out front, Climate Action Brookline, I don't know, to help on that side of the campaign. So I think it's a question for Ziad of if you are developing the policy around this, then who is doing the advocacy and what is the timeline for each segment of that development?
Do you feel like there's going to be some sort of give and take? So, we might come to you and say, well, we want help here. And you might say, well, we can give you some help and all the help you want, that kind of thing. And then we'll evolve the plan that way. Is that how you see it playing out?
I think so, if I'm understanding what you're saying. I
Well,
think
but
so.
you said to the extent that, I think at one point there you said, what would Ziad's ideal warrant article look like? I think that is relatively easy. I mean, first of all, Nick, you put together a quite detailed document, 10 pages that goes into a lot of these things about the need for public contact. I think that's a lot of stuff in it. So, beyond that, sort of a matter of talking about actually sort of implementing that. I mean, as a lawyer, I feel like I could go to right now, go to probably Newton's ordinance and, 10 hours or 5 hours or something, write something that I thought would be the ideal thing, the ideal warrant article. But I don't feel like that's really very helpful. I think that's exactly what people don't want to have represent something. It seems like a thing about me. That's a way of creating opposition.
Yeah, no, I mean, I guess it's, I was approaching it as the draft of the warrant article, but there has to be something for staff to respond to. So if the thing is taking some different form than warrant article form for staff to respond to, then that can happen in whatever document form Ziad wants it to be. But and I can help with that. I think what I'm saying is Ziad is also going to have to. There's no way Berto moves forward without political support, and that is not something that staff can be helpful with. And I think Ziad needs to figure out what is the role that they or others are playing in building that support.
Our interrelated is political support and public process, and so what I'm saying is that staff is really critical to the public process part, I don't think we can do that. We should be. I mean, again, that's that whole issue.
Maybe, so I'm gonna jump to Patty and say, maybe what we should do is Bert is a good example. Maybe we should take like permanent planning and discuss it at the next meeting. And then we can kind of walk through it and see, well, what does this look like and how does this feel?
I think so, because there's elements in there. I mean, we have the big picture. You have a lot of things in that plan. There definitely are things that we could be working on with town staff to just groundwork. I mean, to firm up things that we said up till now, so we need to, we can go on a sample, something like that.
I have a little saying that I use very often in work, which is if you have a plan, it might happen. Right, which is, I feel like we need to have some kind of plan, some kind of timeline, some kind of strategy written down that says this is what we're trying to achieve. I also think that there's like 50 things we could be working on, and if we start to try and work on all 50, we will fail. So I think part of when people look at the plan, we might look at it and be like, oh my God, all we can work on is Virgo this year. Once we look at it and we see how much work it is, we might determine that, or we might look at it and be like, actually, we're all set. Right, so Patty, what's your question?
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry to turn back to this, it's interrupting the flow, but I think we might have things backwards on how OML, can you put that, yeah, keep that slide up, please? How things work with OML. And we, early on in the year, we got a copy of a written opinion that unrelatedly, town council's office had.
Patty, can I stop you saying, I don't want to discuss OML right now. I think we can, if we want to discuss OML, we're going to do another meeting. I think if we can just stay focused on this right now, that'd be better.
Yeah, I am. I was going to, Nick, and I'm not at the next meeting. So I think it's a problem. This slide says Werner and Allen will continue to develop Birdo. So I'll just stop there. Under OML and under that written opinion that we all got, I guess I'll just stop there.
Go ahead, Kathleen.
We can talk about it at the next meeting. I'm good. I think that's a good idea. I also question whether if we're an advisory board to the select board, should the select board be bringing this warrant article forward? I mean,
They're not gonna bring us warrant article forward.
yeah, I mean, I think that's what we need to talk about is,
So I think that's probably a conversation with Michael that would be most helpful.
Right.
Of what is the process. I think overall he'd be helpful in the process, but he would
Yeah.
certainly be helpful on what's the process for DIAB to engage the select board on this, when and how, what does that look like? But they're
and
not.
if they're, right, and if they're not bringing it forward, who are the best people to bring it forward? Is it us? Are we doing more?
I mean, I've been
again?
working on the assumption that things have changed between the select board climate action committee and ZIA. What we're talking about is a warrant article. It has to be spoken by staff. And that sometimes, when something comes from a town meeting, it's usually rarely the select board's name on it. But sometimes it says planning department, sometimes it says another board. But I mean, that, I don't know how that gets decided. That's kind of internal workings is about. But we know sometimes things are coming from the inside, and sometimes we know that they're coming from a town meeting member. And so where I'm coming from is when you and I and Alan did the Alan, what's his name, Alan the architect, did the fossil fuel free stuff, started on that. It sort of started inside, and then we brought it forward as town meeting members coming as advocates. My impression is that may have ruffled some feathers in the state.
Yeah.
But I don't have any qualms about it because it ruffled feathers a lot. Everybody wanted to see that move forward, or whatever. Nobody firebombed my house. So, so we're trying to avoid that now. Therefore, staff need to be involved.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I think, yes, agreed, staff need to be involved. I think that in the case of Birdo, it will be more politically palatable if it is coming from you.
yeah, I think also, I think staff have to be involved, but I do think that anything we work on, processes, we discuss it as a group here with Alexandra and her team, get buy-in from the department, probably get buy-in from Michael, frankly, right? Or at least guidance from Michael,
Guidance.
right? And then having done that, we say, yes, these are the things we're going to do. These are the objectives we want to achieve. This is the timeline. This is the plan. And then we try and get everything to work together. And then some of those things might fall off the plate because staff doesn't have time to support us, or for political reasons we can't bring it forward. We think it has to come from someone we can't find someone to do it or whatever. But, I did have a set of suggestions for initiatives and focus. Patty said she was interested in working on the town grid. Alan and Werner have volunteered or volunteering now for Birdo. Vikram, I had you down for municipal and residential solar just because that's of interest for you. And by the way, these are all placeholders. So if you want to change this, I think you should choose something that you're interested in and passionate about, that you want to push forward as part of what we just discussed. And come up with a set of objectives around it and a plan around it that we can actually work towards, that's actionable. Kathleen, obviously the residential working group,
Oh, sorry.
and myself, new construction. Mine is a little bit placeholder, but that's fine. And then finally, next steps. Each member comes up with objectives to their focus area. We can discuss this stuff I put together for Birdo next week, but I would love it if you guys can hack away at it and make it better. And
So
then
next week,
next meeting, sorry. And for Birdo, what we want is a strategy document that advises the town on how we need to implement Birdo to present to the select board. That would be a good outcome. And a warrant article for spring town meeting. That's a good example. We're now 14 minutes past, which I loathe. So any comments, concerns, thoughts that we want to capture before we go forward? Do people think generally this is the right approach? We have some thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs.
generally, as we've been, it's continuation of the way we have worked in the last year. And the idea of the retrospective was, are we comfortable? Is it all
Yeah.
good? If it's good, we march ahead. If it requires any modification to our approach, we can talk about
We
it.
can talk about that. Well,
Oh, the objectives are just for like this fall leading into the spring.
so the
Is that
objectives
the
that
timeline?
I'll send out what I sent to Alan Warner for Birdo to everyone.
Okay.
It actually has objectives going through 24.
Mm.
Right? Because Birdo will go through 24. It has a 3-phase, like 3 sets, 3 warrant articles. Is the suggestion, is the strategy. We have a warrant article this year, we have a warrant article in 2028, and another one in 2032 or something like that. It actually has the full plan for Birdo, and those are the objectives. But in the near term things, which are more certain, are what we work on. But it tries to paint a picture for the next 15 years, right? Because with Birdo, we're not going to get everything done in the first go round, which is done. And maybe that's not the right strategy. I think it is. Okay, I think we're over. Someone want to move to, wait, I can propose you up.
I will adjourn.
Move your adjourn.
I second.
Okay.
Aye.
But
Hi.
I.
We lost Patty.
You lost 5.
Sure.